Welcome to Alien Shadow. If you love epic sci-fi stories where humanity shines, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. For thrilling HFY adventures, join us and be part of the journey. The unexpected war. The stars above the neutral zone sparkled like cold diamonds, silent and unaware of the war about to begin. Inside the orbital station Verla 5, diplomats from across the galaxy gathered to sign a fragile peace deal. Among them was a young alien girl named Sela from the feline-like race known as the Felari. She walked gracefully, her tail swaying behind her, her silver ears flicking at every sound. She had never seen a human before, only heard rumors about their strange voices and warm hearts. Her job was simple. She worked as an assistant translator for the Falari delegation. Quiet, unnoticed, but everything changed the moment the human representative, Commander Ryan Voss, opened his mouth to speak. Sela was standing behind the curtains arranging documents when she heard him say just 4 words: peace requires shared trust, he said in English voice, calm and deep like the hum of ancient metal. And something inside her snapped awake. Her knees wobbled, her tail froze midair, her pupils dilated as if a switch had flipped inside her. She gripped the wall, gasping silently, her heart racing. For no reason she understood, her body heated in ways it never had before, and a soft whimper escaped her lips. The sound of his voice echoed through her chest, her blood, her instincts. She wasn't sick. She wasn't hurt, but she was activated. She rushed out of the hall, hiding in a service corridor, trying to steady her breath. No one else seemed affected. No other Falari showed signs of what she felt. She remembered old myths from her grandmother about the voice that could awaken a Falari soul. It was just legend, a bedtime tale. Something about the one whose voice aligns with your instinct. She had laughed at it before, but now she wasn't laughing. Later that night, the station became quiet as delegates rested before the final signing. Sela couldn't sleep. Her body burned with confusion. Her tail wouldn't settle. She wandered through the dark halls, pulled by something her mind couldn't fight. Her feet took her to the human quarters, a restricted zone, but she didn't stop. She had to hear his voice again, if only to understand what was happening to her. When she reached the hallway outside Ryan Voss's cabin, she hesitated. Was this madness, or was it fate? Was she chasing danger or truth? Before she could decide, a sudden shockwave rocked the station, followed by a deafening alarm. Lights flashed red, metal creaked, and explosions echoed through the structure. Sela was thrown to the floor, hitting her shoulder, pain jolting through her side. The station's AI blared warnings. Alert, breach in diplomatic wing. All personnel evacuate. Smoke filled the hallway and panic swept across her face. But she forced herself to stand. Doors opened down the corridor and out stepped Ryan Voss, eyes sharp, voice commanding. He spotted her, recognized her feline features, and ran straight toward her. Without hesitation, "This way, it's not safe," he said, grabbing her arm and pulling her with him. That voice again. Even in chaos, his voice made her knees weak. She tried to speak, to explain something, but the words stuck in her throat. He pulled her into a secured stairwell, sealing the door behind them. As fire chased their heels, "What were you doing here?" he asked, breathless, eyes scanning her for injuries. She just looked at him, trembling, her instincts screaming in every nerve. I heard your voice, she whispered finally, unable to hold it in, his brow furrowed in confusion. What? He asked, but gently. Not unkind. My body, it reacts to you, she said, ears low, ashamed and frightened. He didn't mock her, didn't laugh, just stared at her as the lights flickered above. We need to get out of here first, then we talk, he said, firm but calm. They descended deeper into the station, emergency lights guiding their path. Every time he spoke, her heartbeat quickened, her breath grew short. She realized it wasn't just attraction, it was something encoded, ancient, a link between her kind and a voice like his, rare, unheard in generations. And now, of all times, that bond had awoken during the beginning of a war. Behind them, enemy footsteps echoed. The sabotage wasn't an accident. Someone didn't want peace. Someone had declared war in secret. Sela didn't know who, didn't care. All she knew was this human made her feel alive. And if she had to fight beside him, or even die beside him, she would, because something deep inside her had already chosen him completely. And without fear, trapped with the human. The air was thick with smoke and heat as the ceiling groaned above them. Commander Rian Voss held Sela close as another blast shook the structure. Flames danced behind them in the hallway, chasing their steps like hungry beasts. Sela's claws scraped the metal floor as she stumbled to keep up, her ears twitching at every sound. Her instinct screamed, not just from danger but from the man beside her. The stairwell ended in a damaged corridor, filled with flickering lights and broken pipes. Rian shoved open a bent door and pulled her into a dark maintenance room. Inside, it was quiet, the chaos muffled by thick walls and insulation. Sela leaned against a crate, gasping, her heart racing with fear and something else. Rian sealed the door and turned to her, sweat dripping from his brow. You all right? He asked, voice low but steady. She nodded slowly, unable to meet his eyes, her cheeks burning with shame, her tail curled tightly around her leg, her body trembling with the same fire she felt earlier. That voice again. It was too much, too close, too deep. He took off his jacket and offered it to her, mistaking her shivers for cold. I don't understand what's happening to me, she whispered, her fingers brushing his coat. He kneeled down, searching her face for injuries, his voice softening. You're reacting to stress, trauma, maybe even injury, he said gently. She shook her head, pressing a hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat pound violently. No, it's you, your voice. It's inside me like a command. Rian hesitated, watching her, as if trying to read a book written in stardust. I'm not doing anything, he said, unsure if he should step back or get closer. She sat down slowly, wrapping her arms around her knees, her tail twitching nervously. I didn't ask for this, but when you speak I feel like I must obey, she said, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. He stared at her, confused, the silence stretching between them like a bridge not yet crossed. My people were engineered long ago, she continued, voice trembling, engineered to recognize a certain frequency, a tone, something rare. Her breath hitched as his voice gently asked, and do you think I match that? She nodded quickly, her claws scratching the floor gently without realizing it. You don't understand. My body thinks I belong to you now. The room fell still. Only the faint crackle of fires above breaking the silence. Rian stepped back, running a hand through his short brown hair, trying to stay logical. He was a Soldier, a diplomat, a survivor, but not prepared for this. I'm not here to claim anyone, he said calmly, and I'm not your master. Her eyes locked onto him, wild and glassy, but my instincts think you are. Another explosion shook the station, making dust fall from the ceiling. Rian cursed under his breath and checked the controls near the wall. We need to move before the power grid fails, he said, but Sela didn't respond. She was frozen, curled up, overwhelmed by instinct and emotion she couldn't control. He knelt beside her, again not speaking, only placing a hand on her shoulder. The moment his hand touched her, she gasped sharply, her ears shooting up, her eyes locked on his lips, her breathing sharp and fast. Say my name, she whispered suddenly, voice barely a breath. What? He blinked, confused. Say it please, she begged, her body almost shaking. Sela, he said gently. She let out a quiet sound like a purr and collapsed into his arms. Her head rested against his chest, tail wrapping around his waist. Ryan stayed still, unsure whether to hold her or let her go. I'm sorry, she whispered. I can't fight it. I feel safe with your voice, like I was made to hear it. Outside, the station's hall screamed as more weapons hit its side. Their time was running out, but Ryan couldn't ignore the truth anymore. This wasn't a simple crush or panic reaction. Something ancient had awakened in her. He had seen Ferrari warriors before. Graceful, fierce, proud, but never like this, never trembling, never pleading, never attaching so deeply, so quickly. We in LT Unk and GT, LL get out of here, he said, lifting her gently as she clung to him. She nodded into his chest, tears slipping down her cheeks without shame. She wasn't afraid of dying, not really. What terrified her was the bond that had begun and the possibility that he might never accept it, might never speak to her again, but for now, with his arms around her and his voice guiding her, she could breathe again. Her confession. Ryan sat quietly inside the emergency service tunnel, his back against the wall, pulse slowing down after their escape. Beside him, Sela breathed softly, curled into herself like a fragile flame. The room was dim, lit only by the soft blue backup lights flickering above them. All around, the station moaned like a wounded beast, shaking now and then as if remembering pain. They were safe for the moment, but her silence filled the space more than the alarms ever could. Sela hadn't spoken since they fled the maintenance deck, not when he carried her, not when he whispered reassurances, not even when he cleaned the blood off her cheek. Now she sat with her knees drawn to her chest, her silver ears drooped low, tail limp against the floor. Her eyes looked far away, as if she wasn't fully in her body anymore, and when she finally spoke, her voice was hollow and broken, like glass under pressure. You need to know what I am, she whispered. Rian didn't answer immediately, giving her the space to speak. She swallowed hard, her claws digging into her arms like she was holding something in. We Ferrari were made by design, she said, not lifting her head. Centuries ago, long before peace, long before war. He listened calm, his breath steady, eyes never leaving her. My ancestors were given instincts, codes buried deep inside ourselves, she said, not just for hunting or survival, but for connection. She looked up at him slowly, and her glowing eyes shimmered with something ancient. They made us so we would recognize one voice in all the stars and serve that voice with our life. Ryan's brows furrowed. Not in Disbelief, but something close to concern. You mean like a bond? He asked. Yes, she said, her voice trembling like a thread in the wind. But it's more than love, more than mating, more than anything humans have a word for. It's instinct, it's blood deep. Obedience, it's surrender. She rose too, her knees slowly, looking right into his eyes. When you spoke, my instincts lit up. Like a sun inside me, I fought it, I ran, but every part of me was screaming. To find you, to hear you again. Her chest moved with every shaky breath as her tail wrapped nervously around her leg. My body isn't mine anymore. It's responding to you. Rian took a long breath and stood up, stepping closer but not touching her yet. I don't want you to feel trapped, he said gently. I'm not trying to control you. I didn't even know. I know, she said, nodding quickly, but it doesn't matter. Bond is forming whether you ask or not. She looked away then, eyes wet, voice cracking. And if you reject me, I might not survive it. The weight of her words hit him harder than the station's collapse ever could. I've read about ancient species bonding, psychic threads imprinting, he murmured, but nothing said it was this intense. It's rare, she whispered, 1 in thousands. Maybe more. Not every Falari even believes it still exists, but I do now, she said, placing her hand over her racing heart, because you woke it inside me. He crouched beside her, close enough for her to feel the warmth of his skin. I didn't mean to change you, he said quietly. You didn't, she replied. You revealed me. Her eyes locked on his, again full of fear, hunger, and something deeper, faith. If you told me to stop breathing, my body would obey. That's how deep this instinct goes. Rian reached out slowly and placed a hand over hers. She flinched, not in fear, but because the touch felt like lightning in her blood. I'm not going to hurt you, he said. I believe you, she whispered, but my body doesn't need permission. It already belongs to you. She leaned forward slightly, trembling. Please, don't cast me away. Outside the room, a new tremor shook the wall, but neither of them moved. In that small space, the war didn't matter, only this fragile bond blooming between two worlds. You're not mine, Rian said softly, but you can choose me if that's what you want. Sela's breath caught in her throat, her ears lifting slowly in hope. You mean you'd accept the bond? I'm still learning what it means, he replied, but I won't walk away. Sela reached up slowly and touched his face, her claws gentle against his cheek. Then, I won't break, she whispered, as long as your voice is near. I can survive anything. And when he smiled, saying her name once more, she melted in his arms, not as a warrior, not as a servant, but as someone who had finally found the one voice the stars had created her to follow. The enemy in the shadows, the lights above them died. Without warning, only silence remained, thick and heavy like the breath before a scream. Sela's ears perked up instantly, her claws extending with instinctive speed. Rian moved beside her without a word, already drawing the emergency stun pistol from his belt. Something had entered the lower level of the station, and it wasn't friendly. The air shifted, the kind of shift you feel before a predator strikes. Sela pressed her back to the wall, her tail low, her nose twitching. Her voice was low but sharp. We're not alone, Rian nodded, his military instincts kicking in, one hand on her shoulder to keep her grounded. He didn't need to ask how she knew. He believed her body's senses more than the broken sensors. They moved through the prop, the narrow maintenance shaft in Silence each step placed with precision. Sela's balance was perfect, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She seemed almost feral now, but not out of control. She was focused, her instincts sharpened further when Rian whispered her name, guiding her left through the shadows. His voice didn't weaken her. This time, it strengthened her like armor wrapped in sound. Suddenly, a shape dropped from the ceiling in front of them, dark and fast. The enemy was a Jurassic warrior, massive, armored in thick bioshell plates, eyes red with rage. Rian raised his pistol and fired. Without thinking, the bolt crashing into the creature's chest, but the Jurassic didn't fall, roared and charged. Claws raised, mouth foaming with fury. Sela leaped without hesitation, launching herself between the enemy and Rian. Like a blur of silver, she hit the Dzik with all her force, claws slicing across its face, knocking it backward. The beast howled in pain, but another one appeared from the side, lunging straight at Rian. Down, Sela shouted, her voice powerful now, trained natural. Rian dropped as the second creature swiped at the air above him, missing by inches. He rolled and fired again, this time hitting its leg and forcing it to collapse with a screech. Sela moved like a dancer of war, graceful and deadly. Every motion was precise, her breathing synced with the rhythm of Rian's words. He shouted quick commands and her body followed them as if they were part of her bones. LFT, he called, and she spun left, dodging a claw swipe and landing a fatal slash to the creature's neck. Now back, he said, and she pulled away just before it exploded into acidic smoke. They regrouped near a fallen beam, both panting, skin soaked in sweat and enemy blood. Sela looked at him, her eyes glowing brighter than ever, her chest rising and falling like she had just been born again. Your voice, she whispered. It gives me speed, purpose, even strength. He stared at her in disbelief. You mean it's real, even in battle? She nodded, placing her clawed hand over her heart. Especially in battle. They moved quickly through the hallway, following the map Rian had memorized years ago. The escape pods were on the far end of the diplomatic wing, now fully controlled by the Drazik. Sela's steps were faster now, not from fear, but from instinct sharpened by survival. Her bond with Rian, no longer confused, her guided her, every beat of her heart synced with his voice as if her blood had accepted its new rhythm. They reached the corridor outside the escape bay, and Rian scanned the doors for access codes. Hold them off if they come, he said, tapping into the control panel. Sela didn't hesitate, standing in front of him, claws ready, eyes focused. A single command from him would turn her into a living blade, and she welcomed that purpose. To protect him was no longer a choice, was a truth embedded in every cell she carried. Two more Drazik soldiers charged the hall, armored and roaring like beasts of ancient war. Strike the one on the right, Rian ordered, voice firm. Sela darted like lightning, claws aimed at the weak point behind its neck. Now dodge, he said, and she slipped under the other's arm just as it swiped at her. He fired at the second one's leg, then chest, finishing it before it fell forward with a heavy thud. After the last Drazik dropped, Sela stood tall, blood splattered on her face, tail flicking behind her. Rian walked up, slowly lowering his weapon, staring at her with a strange awe. You're more than just instinct, he said. She looked into his eyes, smiling for the first time since the chaos began. I'm what I was Meant to be, she whispered, and you're the one who unlocked it. The bond deepened. Steam hissed from the broken pipes as they entered a quiet chamber tucked beneath the escape bay. It was an old engineering room, barely functional, but the walls were thick, enough to drown out the war above. Rian sealed the door behind them with a code. Override, then dropped his weapon in. Let out a long breath. Sela stood in the corner, still as a statue, her hands shaking, though no enemy was present. For the first time since the attack began, there was silent sand. It was louder than any explosion. She turned slowly to face him, her silver fur dirty and blood-stained, eyes still glowing. Faintly, I should be afraid, she whispered, but I'm not. Rian stepped closer, watching her closely, his voice calm. Why not? Because you're near, she answered, her voice like the hush before dawn. Her tail moved slowly behind her, curling like a question. She couldn't speak. He took a seat on a broken crate, wiping sweat from his brow, his body heavy with exhaustion. You fought like a soldier, he said, eyes meeting hers. I fought because you told me to, she said softly, and I wanted to hear you. Again, she stepped closer, each movement deliberate, each breath held like it was sacred. This something else I need to show you, she added, voice almost a whisper. She reached behind her neck and pulled a small silver pendant from beneath her tunic. The charm glowed, faintly shaped like a crescent moon, cradling a drop of light. This is a bond token, she said, placing it in his hand. It glows only when a true match is found. Rian looked at it carefully, the light pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. I didn't plan this, she said, stepping even closer, her voice trembling now. My kind don't get to choose, we're chosen. And you think I'm the one who activated it, he asked. I know you are, she said, her hands clenching as if trying to hold in her heart. When you speak, this token responds like it's alive. Rian held it, feeling the warmth from the charm bleed into his fingers. And what happens if I accept this bond, he asked carefully, her breath hitched. Then I become yours fully, he blinked, surprised by her honesty. And if I don't, she looked down, voice cracking. Then the bond will collapse, and I might collapse with it. He stood up slowly, facing her with a seriousness that made her ears lower in caution. I didn't ask for this, he began, but I won't walk away from it either. Sela's eyes widened, shimmering with hope that had been buried by fear for too long. You don't have to own me, she said, her voice small. Just don't reject me. I don't want a servant, he replied, placing the charm back in her hand. I want a partner. Her claws trembled as she tucked the charm away again, then slowly reached up to touch his cheek. You speak to me like I matter, she said, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. Because you do, he answered, not pulling away from her touch. Their faces were inches apart now, the tension between them no longer dangerous but sacred. Sela leaned forward until her forehead rested against his chest, heart racing against his skin. I've never felt peace like this, she said, eyes closed. He wrapped his arms around her, gently, not claiming, just holding. And I've never been followed so completely, he said, voice low and warm. Her tail wrapped slowly around his leg, the last step in her species bonding ritual. She didn't need permission. Her body had already decided, and now her soul agreed. They stayed that way for a long time, hidden in a room built for wires and fuel. Two lives from different worlds, now bound by voice, instinct, and silent trust the war above continued. But here the storm had passed for the first time. Sela felt whole, not because she was rescued, but because she was heard, and for Rian, a man made by orders and duty, her loyalty touched at place no mission ever had. He pulled away slightly, looking into her eyes with something unspoken but clear. We in LT, Unk and GT, LL face what's coming together, he said. She nodded, no longer trembling, no longer afraid. She had found the voice that completed her, and he had found someone worth protecting. Not because of a treaty, but because of a bond that didn't need words, only a whisper, and she would move mountains. Asterisk the return and the threat. Escape pod launched with a heavy jolt, spinning once before stabilizing in the dark of space. Rian strapped Sela beside him, the cabin small and tight, barely room for breath between them. Below them, the station burned like a falling star, pieces breaking off into nothingness. The war had begun without warning, without mercy, but for now they had survived. Sela gripped his arm tightly, her tail coiled around his boot, like it refused to let go. Her breathing was fast, her ears pinned back, eyes wide with memory. Rian placed a hand over hers and spoke gently. We made it. Those 3 words were enough to slow her heart, his voice still the anchor in her storm. I thought we'd die in there, she whispered, her claws flexing slowly. But you spoke and my body moved. Die didn't need to think. Just follow. The pod screen blinked, signaling a safe approach toward the human fleet orbiting the next moon. This is Commander Voss, Rian said into the comm. 2 survivors incoming, requesting clearance. A voice responded quickly, professional and sharp. Acknowledged. Bring her in. Sela looked through the window, eyes fixed on the fleet. Human ships lined like teeth in the stars. She had never seen Earth vessels up close before, but they carried the scent of safety. Now as the pod docked, she whispered something without realizing. They're going to take me from you. Rian looked over, caught off guard. What, my people? She said, her voice growing quiet. They'll know the bond formed. They'll try to break it, she added, her voice filled with something colder than fear. The hatch opened and the world exploded into light and voices and boots. Medical crews pulled them out, quickly checking for wounds, rushing through protocols. Sela stayed close to Rian, her claws slightly out, tails sweeping low like she was guarding territory. The others looked at her with curiosity, some with concern, one even with disgust. But Rian didn't release her hand, not once, not even when command officers approached. They were brought into a debriefing room, bright and sterile, full of rank and judgment. Admiral Ree stood at the front, a cold man with years etched into his face. He eyed Sela with suspicion, arms crossed tightly behind his back. You brought an alien into human command space, he said flatly. Rian answered without pause. She saved my life and I saved hers. She's bonded, another officer muttered. Reading data from a scanner. Sela stood straight, her ears twitching. Yes, I am. Unacceptable, Ree said sharply. Filari bonds are a threat to free will. They're instinctual, Sela replied, not manipulation. She didn't choose this, Rian added, but she chooses me now. Murmurs filled the room, protocol clashing with instinct. Law versus bond. We'll need to hold her until we contact the Filari High Council, Ree announced. No, Rian said, stepping forward. You can't detain someone for following biology. She's not a prisoner, he added, voice rising just enough to be heard over the tension. She's my ally and she's under my protection. Before anyone could respond, the room's lights dimmed as an incoming transmission lit the wall. A tall, regal Falari female appeared on screen, her golden armor shining. Sela froze. Eyes, why this was High Elder Jira. Voice of the Bond Council, you carry one of ours, Jira said to Rian, her voice soft but sharp like blades wrapped in silk. She carries my voice now, Ryan replied, meeting the Ellers' gaze. Without blinking, the bond was triggered, Sela said, stepping forward. Slowly, Jira narrowed her eyes. You were not authorized to engage with off-worlders. It was not my choice, Sela said calmly, but now that it's formed, I won't deny it. You defy your code, the elder replied. You risk genetic corruption. I risk nothing that my heart didn't already decide, Sela answered firmly. Silence filled the room, tension thick as stone. Then Jabira's eyes shifted, focusing only on Rian. Do you accept the full bond? She asked. Rian looked at Sela, saw the way she held her breath, the way her claws pressed into her palm. Yes, he said simply. I do. The screen went black. No further words, no threats, no promises. The room remained frozen. Officers unsure of what came next. Sela stepped beside him, tail rising again, ears lifted. She wasn't a shadow anymore. She was standing in the light. And she wasn't alone. I thought they'd tear us apart, she whispered, voice shaking. They still might, Ryan said, placing a hand over hers again. But now they know one thing they didn't expect. What? She asked softly. That a voice strong enough to awaken you, he said, looking into her eyes, is also strong enough to defend you, defying the Empire. The Grand Chamber of the United Galactic Council had not seen this kind of silence in decades. Commanders, diplomats, and envoys sat in their seats like statues, eyes fixed on the center platform. There stood a single human and one Falari girl, their hands gently linked, their bodies unshaken by the crowd. Sela's tail swayed slowly behind her, calm but alert, her silver ears perked, her eyes sharp and full of fire. Rian stood beside her like a stone wall and moved unshaken, unwilling to let her stand alone. High Elder Jira entered from the far gate, her golden robe trailing behind her like a living flame. She stepped forward in silence, followed by 5 armored judges of the Fari ancestral court. None of them looked at Rian, not at first. They looked only at Silahaz, if trying to see through her. You were warned, Jira said quietly, her voice filling the chamber. Without force, you knew the bond was forbidden, she added, eyes narrowing just slightly. I didn't choose the bond, Sela replied, her voice steady and clear, but I choose to honor it, she added, taking one step forward. You are young, said one of the judges, easily swayed by emotion. Then explain why my body risked death to protect his voice, she countered. Explained why I grew stronger with every word he spoke. The hall whispered with murmurs, voices low and sharp like blades under cloaks. Rian didn't speak. Yet, not until the moment he was directly addressed. Human, Jira said, finally turning toward him. You have claimed what does not belong to your kind. I claimed nothing, he answered. I answered when she called. That made some of the human side smile, others tense up. You understand what you've done? Asked a Ferrari general from the side. You've broken a pattern that survived for centuries. I didn't break anything, Ryan said, his voice deep, and even I stood beside Someone who is being forced to live by rule she didn't choose. The words sank in, but not everyone accepted them. Younger Faleri officer stood up, eyes burning. If this is allowed, others will follow, he shouted. Then let them, Sela said, her voice firm and bright. Let those who find the voice choose it like I did. A silent pause followed, long enough to measure a lifetime. Then from behind the back rows, another voice rose. Soft, uncertain, but loud enough to be heard. A Ferrari girl no older than Sela stepped forward, her cloak modest, her ears twitching nervously. I too heard a human's voice, she said, looking down at the floor. And I've hidden it for years. Gasps moved through the crowd like cold wind across metal. The judges turned toward her in disbelief. I've lived in silence because I feared my body would be labeled broken, she said. But now I see it's not broken, it's awake. Jabira and LT Unk and GT, eyes widened just slightly, but her voice remained calm. You would dismantle generations of law. For what, she asked. For love, the girl said, looking towards Sela. For truth, Sela corrected gently. For the right to choose who we answered to, not who tradition assigns us. The chamber was no longer quiet, it was alive. Elders began speaking softly to each other while human delegates watched the cracks appear in ancient walls. Rian whispered to Sela, we may not win the council, but we've already started something. Sela leaned into him slightly. I don't care if they approve or not, as long as I can stay near your voice. More Fari now shifted in their seats, ears tilted, tails low, listening, not judging. Change had entered the chamber, not as a scream, but as a whisper too powerful to ignore. After an hour of debate and motion, Jira stood again, the chamber falling into silence once more. This council will not forbid your bond, she said, her voice edged with reluctant respect. But know this, your kind will watch and not all will celebrate. Sela bowed slightly, but her words were sharper than any blade. We are not here to be celebrated, we are here to be free. Crowd stood in parts, some stayed cold, some simply stared. But as Sela and Rian walked hand in hand through the gates, no one dared stop them. Outside the chamber, the sun of the human home world rose in golden beams, casting long shadows behind them. Sela took one deep breath, feeling the warmth on her fur. For the first time in days, I always thought I was just another piece in someone else's plan, she said. Not anymore, Rian replied, brushing her hand gently with his thumb. You're not a piece, he added, voice low. You're the whole reason I kept fighting. She smiled, her tail curling happily around his leg. Again, you still don't understand what your voice does to me, she said. Then say it again, he replied, leaning closer, and I'll speak until your world forget silence.